There are moments in life when you can feel the weight of lack pressing down on your soul. It's not just about money, it's the feeling of being trapped in cycles of not enough time, not enough energy, not enough confidence to move forward. You see others progressing, yet you feel stuck, drained, and uncertain. Inside you whisper, why does this pattern follow me? That sense of inner poverty, of limitation, is not only emotional or financial, it's spiritual. And many people don't realize that what they call bad luck or constant struggle is often a reflection of something deeper, a spiritual mindset that quietly rules how we think, act, and even pray. But there's a hidden key, one ancient and powerful, found in a psalm that carries the frequency of abundance, rest, and divine provision. When meditated upon deeply, it begins dismantling the spirit of poverty, not through magic, but through renewal of mind and realignment of heart. Let's go back for a moment. In ancient Hebrew culture, Psalms were not mere poems. They were spiritual technologies, words designed to synchronize the human mind with divine truth. Each verse was intended to reshape thought patterns and emotional energy. Modern neuroscience now confirms what the ancients seemed to know intuitively. Focused meditation on meaningful, emotionally charged words rewires the brain. When we repeat and feel those words, especially words rooted in faith and trust, our brain releases neurochemicals that improve clarity, calm anxiety, and inspire constructive behavior. So when someone meditates on a psalm about divine provision, like the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, it's not superstition. It's cognitive transformation. The phrase I shall not want becomes an instruction to the subconscious mind, signaling safety, sufficiency, and trust. As this message repeats, the neural circuits of fear and scarcity weaken, the body relaxes, creativity reawakens, hope starts to return. And that shift alone can open doors that anxiety had kept closed. But we must be honest. Reading a psalm once, without understanding its depth, won't change your financial reality overnight. The 24 hours isn't about external wealth suddenly appearing. It's about how quickly your inner vibration, your mental and emotional state, can shift when faith, focus, and truth come together. When that shift happens, you begin to notice opportunities you previously ignored. You make decisions with more confidence, and you handle money with greater wisdom. The psalm becomes a mirror that reveals the abundance already present within you. Psychologists call this a state of cognitive reframing. Spiritually, we call it renewal of the mind. Both point to the same principle. When you change how you perceive life, life changes in response. The psalm works because it redefines your relationship with God, with yourself, and with resources. It removes the emotional charge of fear that keeps you bound to limitation. Let's also look at the emotional mechanism behind this. When you read a psalm of abundance, your breathing slows, your nervous system resets, and your mind enters a theta state, a brainwave pattern linked to meditation and deep learning. In that state, your subconscious absorbs new beliefs more easily. The moment you truly feel peace in the words, you're not just reading, you're reprogramming. Your physiology begins to align with your belief in sufficiency. However, this is not a replacement for practical responsibility. The psalm doesn't cancel the need for effort or wise decision-making. Instead, it harmonizes the inner state so your actions become more effective and less reactive. Think of it like tuning an instrument before a performance. You still have to play, but now every note resonates clearly. There are a few simple yet powerful ways to practice this. Read the psalm aloud several times in the morning and before bed, not as a ritual but as an intimate conversation. As you do, visualize areas of your life where you felt limited. Replace those images with scenes of peace, flow, and sufficiency. Breathe slowly. Let gratitude fill you for what you already have. no matter how small. Within 24 hours, you'll notice something, a calmness, a mental shift, perhaps even a new idea or unexpected help. That's the sign that the inner atmosphere has changed. Avoid turning this practice into superstition or greed. The goal isn't to demand money, but to awaken alignment. The Psalm's power lies in revealing that poverty is not just absence of money, it's absence of trust, of clarity, of gratitude. When those return, abundance follows naturally. Science now validates what faith has always taught, that mindset determines perception, perception directs behavior, and behavior shapes outcomes. The Psalm functions as a psychological reset, breaking the pattern of anxiety and self-sabotage that keeps people repeating cycles of lack. It invites you into a higher state of consciousness where peace, provision, and purpose coexist. This is how one psalm, meditated upon with understanding and faith, can begin to destroy the spirit of poverty within 24 hours. Because the moment your mind is renewed, your reality begins to follow. When a person meditates on a psalm with full attention and emotion, the brain begins to change. Neuroscientists call this process neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself through repeated focus and emotional experience. The human mind doesn't just store words, it records emotional meaning attached to them. When a psalm is spoken with faith and reflection, it activates the same neural circuits that are engaged during deep gratitude, hope, and love. These circuits, located in the prefrontal cortex and limbic system, regulate how we interpret life and how we respond to stress. Repetition of spiritual truths, like the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, gradually replaces fear-based thoughts with security-based beliefs. Over time, the old neural pathways connected to scarcity and anxiety lose strength, while the new ones that reinforce trust and abundance grow stronger. Studies in psychology and neuroscience confirm that daily meditation or prayer reshapes the default mode network, the area of the brain that governs our inner dialogue. As this area quiets down, a person begins to experience greater clarity and emotional stability. There's also a physiological shift. As the words of the psalm are internalized, the body releases serotonin and oxytocin, hormones that promote calmness and connection. Cortisol, the stress hormone responsible for fear and financial anxiety, begins to lower. This internal balance improves cognitive flexibility, helping the mind to see creative solutions rather than obstacles. The heart rhythm also becomes more coherent, synchronizing emotional stability with rational thinking. Through this process, meditation on a psalm becomes more than recitation. It becomes neurological training. Each repetition aligns the subconscious mind with divine truth, teaching the brain to expect provision instead of fear lack. Over time, this changes perception, decision-making, and even one's sense of what is possible. The poverty mindset is not just a financial issue, but a mental and emotional condition that develops through repeated exposure to fear, limitation, and uncertainty. From a psychological perspective, it is a learned cognitive pattern, an internal programming formed by past experiences, social environment, and family beliefs. When a person grows up hearing phrases like, money is hard to earn, or we never have enough, these statements become embedded as subconscious truths. Over time, they shape perception, influencing how a person interprets opportunities, risk, and self-worth. This is how a spirit of poverty manifests, not as an external curse, but as a deeply ingrained set of thought loops that continually reinforce lack. Psychologists refer to this as a cognitive schema, a mental framework through which all experiences are filtered. A person with a scarcity schema tends to focus on what is missing, expect struggle, and unconsciously resist success out of fear of loss or rejection. These thought patterns keep the body in a constant state of mild stress, increasing cortisol and reducing motivation and clarity. When the mind is programmed to anticipate insufficiency, even good opportunities can appear unsafe or unreachable. Scriptural meditation directly interrupts this cycle. When a psalm declaring divine provision and trust is repeated consistently, it introduces a new narrative into the subconscious. Over time, this repetition weakens the emotional grip of old scarcity beliefs. The brain begins to form new associations, linking peace and faith with abundance instead of anxiety. This process mirrors what cognitive behavioral therapy aims to achieve, replacing distorted, fear-based beliefs with truth-centered thinking. The more a person internalizes spiritual truths, the more the emotional body stabilizes. Eventually, the individual starts making choices from a mindset of sufficiency rather than desperation, shifting their entire experience of life and provision. ChatGPT said, when a person engages deeply with a psalm, especially one centered on abundance or divine care, something profound happens inside the body. The act of speaking sacred words with genuine emotion stimulates both the psychological and physiological systems. Neuroscience and psychophysiology have shown that faith-filled speech activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the body's natural calming mechanism. This reduces heart rate, lowers blood pressure, and creates a state of coherence between the heart and brain. As a result, the mind becomes clearer and more focused, while emotional tension begins to dissolve. The words of the psalm start to carry a vibrational quality that influences mood and perception, turning anxiety into peace and confusion into confidence. When faith and emotion align, neurotransmitters like dopamine and endorphins are released, creating feelings of joy, hope, and renewed energy. This is not imagination, it is measurable biology. The limbic system, which governs emotions and motivation, responds to belief as if the outcome were already real. This means that when someone repeats a psalm of provision with conviction, their brain begins to behave as though abundance is already present. Over time, this emotional resonance shifts not only the way they feel, but how they think and act. Spiritually and psychologically, this process creates what researchers call embodied faith. The psalm becomes more than a recitation. It becomes a sensory experience. The rhythm of breathing, the tone of voice, and the inner visualization of God's care combine to form a powerful emotional imprint. This imprint builds resilience against worry and helplessness, allowing a person to remain hopeful even under pressure. The transformation is subtle yet deep. The mind no longer vibrates with fear, but with expectancy. This expectancy becomes a new emotional default, influencing daily decisions and restoring a sense of inner abundance that naturally attracts outer provision. Transformation through Scripture does not stop at the level of thought. It reaches into behavior and alignment. A person who repeatedly meditates on a psalm of abundance begins to embody its principles through action. Psychology calls this behavioral conditioning, the process where internal belief gradually influences external conduct. When someone genuinely believes in divine provision, their choices begin to reflect that trust. They become more generous, more disciplined, and more confident in their decisions. These actions are not random. They stem from an inner assurance that there is enough, that one is supported by divine order. Over time, this alignment changes how resources are managed, how goals are approached, and how obstacles are perceived. From a scientific standpoint, beliefs are not passive. They regulate perception and motivation. When the mind shifts from scarcity to sufficiency, the brain releases neurotransmitters that enhance focus and creativity. This helps a person identify new opportunities that they might have previously overlooked due to fear or pessimism. The psalm, when meditated upon sincerely, becomes a mental framework that trains the subconscious to act in alignment with principles of growth, gratitude, and stewardship. It teaches that abundance is not a possession, but a pattern, a way of thinking and living that attracts continuous provision. Behaviorally, this alignment shows up as consistency in work, improved relationships, and wiser decision-making. The Psalm's truth shapes daily habits, budgeting with purpose, giving without fear, and pursuing excellence instead of survival. In this sense, divine provision becomes practical. It manifests through responsibility, diligence, and faith-driven confidence. The individual stops reacting from panic and starts responding from peace. Such a person begins to live from sufficiency rather than striving for it, naturally drawing in opportunities and favor because their mindset and behavior now resonate with the very principles that sustain abundance. The true power of this psalm lies not in superstition, but in transformation. When spoken with faith, reflected upon with understanding, and lived out through alignment, it renews the mind from the inside out. The spirit of poverty loses its grip, not because circumstances magically change, but because the inner world is reordered. Thoughts, emotions, and actions begin to harmonize with divine truth. What once felt impossible starts to unfold naturally, and peace takes the place of worry. In that quiet confidence, provision flows, not as a miracle to chase, but as a reality to live in every day.